I'd like to call the Board of Commissioners back to order for our afternoon session for May the 3rd. We have two public hearings this afternoon. So we'll start with the first one, which is item A. It's a public hearing, order 16-05-03-06, in the matter of withdrawal of county road status, but not the public road status, of a portion of county road number 269 located between Beimer Road and Shircon Road. It's 18-03-29 and 32, 19-03-05 and 08. We have with us our County Surveyor, Jay Blamé. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. I have with me today David Reeser, who's the Lane County Transportation Planning Supervisor. He's available today to answer any questions you might have from a transportation planning perspective. We're here today to conduct a public hearing to consider the withdrawal of county road status, but not the public road status of a portion of County Road 269 located between the current end of county maintenance of Beimer Road and Shircon Road, as shown on the attachment in this agenda item. The portion of road proposed to be withdrawn was established in 1869. It is unconstructed and it is approximately 2.35 miles in length. It is important to note that any portion of Beimer Road or Shircon Road that is currently being maintained by the road department of the county will not be affected by this action. The reason this action is being brought before the board is because of a Lane County land management application for a non-farm dwelling from the owner of a property located just beyond the current end of county maintenance for Beimer Road. One of the conditions of approval for this application is to construct approximately 1,000 feet of additional roadway beyond the current end of county maintenance. If the county road status is withdrawn, that landowner and any subsequent landowners along this section of road will be able to build the road to a local access road standard, which is a lesser standard than a county road, and that would be a considerable cost savings to those landowners. If the county road status is withdrawn, Lane County will not be responsible for the maintenance beyond what is currently being maintained by the county. That would add a cost savings for potential future maintenance costs to the county road fund. If the portion of county road proposed to be withdrawn is approved, its status will change to a local access road and will remain a source of legal access to any abutting landowners. Per ORS 368.026 and Lane Manual 15.300, conversion of county roads to local access roads may be considered where little need exists, where the roads are undeveloped right-of-ways or dirt roads, or are not currently being maintained by county forces. This portion of County Road 269 meets these criteria. The Surveyor's Office has notified several Lane County divisions, including Transportation Planning and Land Management, as well as utility companies, fire districts, and neighboring landowners about this proposal. We've received a few inquiries, but ultimately no one has objected to this proposal. In addition, all requirements for posting, notification by mail, and publication required by ORS 368 has been met by our office. That's my presentation. At this time, I'd like to turn this over to the board for further discussion.
Okay. So do we have any questions of staff before we open the public hearing? Commissioner Farr?
A bit. 1859 was when it was
1869.
69. Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Bozovich?
Just one question of clarity. So if we approve this action, the road will still exist as a local access road in its current right-of-way configuration connecting the two roads?
That is correct.
And if the county chose so 20 years in the future, for some reason our road fund's flush, we're cutting timber or whatever else, and we chose to, and we saw the need to eventually have some kind of additional connection between, Eugene suburbs and Cresswell suburbs, Could we convert this back to a county roadway?
I believe the answer would be yes.
Okay.
The only thing I wouldn't be sure about would be whether, how the road was constructed and whether it would be allowed.
I'm sure there'd be a pretty heavy cost. That's why I said,
Right.
Pretend we're suddenly flush with money and we can afford to take an LAR and convert it
Sure.
to county standards. But it's not I just want to check to make sure it's not an irreversible decision.
No,
that some board 100 years from now is going to be cussing us because we downgraded this from a county road to an LAR, and 100 years from now, the traffic need may be there to have that connection. So if it's not irreversible, that's what I wanted to confirm.
That is correct.
Other questions or comments? Okay. Seeing none, I'll go ahead and open the public hearing. We have two folks that are signed up. The first is Derek, is it Sayers? You want to come forward to the mic here, and if you can state your name and I guess town of residence, and then I'll give you 3 minutes to speak.
Okay, my name is Derek Salyers. I live in Eugene on Christensen Road. I'm the landowner where this right-of-way that's in question right now passes through. The 2.35 miles is essentially all on my property. And my neighbor, Eva, applied for this change, and I don't oppose that for her piece of property, and I understand that, and that makes good sense. I have two concerns. I came and I met with the county surveyor, and I'll be the first to admit I left that discussion not knowing that I understand exactly the implications for our family, and that's why I'm here today. There's two things I'm still concerned about. One, when you talk about the cost of maintenance being relieved from the county, it appears to me that if we still have a public right-of-way, an individual could come in and build a road through my ranch for 2.35 miles, and now I'm responsible for maintenance on that road, even if I didn't want it, if I'm not developing my property. And I don't really feel like I should be put in that position. I understand the question about still having the ability to convert this and go back and create a public right-of-way again. But it seems like we're potentially, my family's being put in the bite of the line here to reduce that standard for development on this other piece of property. I understand the county says we don't have need of this right away at this point in time. We want to abandon it. My question is, why not just simply vacate it? And my family has submitted a formal application to put our ranch in a conservation easement, which means there will be no development ever in perpetuity. That 2.35 miles of this roadway will run right through that conservation easement. So development in the future is not a reason to hold on to it. Those are my concerns.
Okay. We can attempt to answer your questions, I think, before we close the public hearing.
Okay. And I didn't, when I left the meeting with the surveyor, I didn't understand that the cost of maintenance could suddenly fall on our shoulders if somebody decided to build a road through our property, which doesn't seem likely because the cost of construction would be high. But then the maintenance, to have that fall to us on a gravel road for several miles could be a pretty big number every year. So, thank you.
Correct. Okay. Next is Harry Taylor.
Chair Stewart, Commissioners, Harry Taylor, Land Use Consultant, P.O. Box 1420, Veneta. I'm representing the party who actually initiated this, and actually I should say I initiated a lot of this request. That's RST Ranch Incorporated, Eva Jameson. Ms. Jameson owns the first property on the west at the end of, when you look at your map, of the northern end of this section that's being asked for the change. This all came about when I was preparing the land use application for a non-farm dwelling. My conversations with Dan Ingram from Transportation Planning led us to what sort of improvements would be required on roughly 800 feet or 1,000 feet of this roadway to get to the proposed home site. And because it was a county road, it was talked about 18 to 20 feet of asphalt surface. That seemed to be excessive for one home site, especially when this road was not serving anything beyond it or further south, especially towards Mr. Salyer's property. So after numerous conversations with transportation staff and Bill Morgan at the time, it came up with this recommendation by the county to change the status to local access road. So we just feel that we'd like the board to support your option one, and is to change the status of at least the first portion of this county road. There is no road there now. As the Mr. Blume indicated, it's been a paper road since 1869, but it doesn't really go anyplace other than on paper. So that's all I have, unless you have any questions.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Commissioner Farr?
Thank you. Looking at Christensen Road, it looks like Christensen Road does go all the way through in one form or another to Shirkon Road from Dillard Road. Is that right? Looking at the map here, it looks like it does.
I'm not sure if Christensen Road goes all the way through or not. I don't believe it does.
And okay. Then at the end of Shirkon Road, there's a road that veers off to the right. It looks like it goes to a gravel pit, perhaps. Veers off to the east, excuse me.
We got
Yeah.
some questions, and maybe, Derek, could you
Yeah, thank
come
you.
forward to the mic, please?
Yeah, and this may or may not be pertinent to my decision process.
Christensen Road comes down, and there's a private gate. County road maintenance stops, and it's private through there. And there's a gate on the Shere Khan end as well, so there's no
Okay.
public access through
So
there.
there's a farm access basically for your
Yeah,
ranch.
yeah,
Okay.
and it only serves two ownerships.
Yeah, okay.
Majority of that's
Okay.
our ranch.
We should probably lessen the likelihood of the Beamer Road being extended, I would think.
I just, from a practical standpoint, I'm not a surveyor, but
Yeah.
the extension of Shere Khan is not a good right of way. It's not a good place to build a road anyway. It's wet, and it just wouldn't be where you'd build the road, where that right of way exists.
Is that an old gravel pit down there?
There is a gravel pit that's at the end of Shere Khan.
Yeah, looks like it's disused perhaps, but,
It's still being used.
oh, it is being used. Okay, great. Well, thank you very much, and I'll just await the answers to the earlier questions. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, so before I move forward with answering a few questions, that was the only two that were signed up for today's hearing. Is anyone else would like to address the board? Yeah, please come forward and state your name and.
Hi, I'm Brant Bunting, and I reside at 32435 Beamer Road. And when we first received this notification of the proposed change from the county road to a public road, we were not aware at the time that that was even a county road. So my wife and I did our best to investigate where this road went and what the purpose was and what the difference between a county road and a public road, etc. Hearing Mr. Sawyers, I can really appreciate his position. However, I find myself coming from a different angle as a member of the county. This road belongs to the county, and I would strongly object to having it vacated at the very most. I don't think we have any question on it being moved from a county road to a public road. I do have a question on what that actually means in relation to abutting landowners that you mentioned. My property doesn't abut the specific area of Beamer Road that they're speaking of, and that would be a concern. I guess from my standpoint, we would very much like to have access to that road, It currently has somewhere between 2 and 3 and maybe 4 fences that, now that I've learned that it's a county road, most likely has impeded anybody else's use other than the RST Ranch or Mr. Sawyer's property. And I would like clarification on those ramifications, possible adverse possession ramifications. Those are the kind of questions that, as I mentioned, as someone that lives in the county, have concerns, particularly considering that right now the county, as far as I can tell, hasn't spent a dime on that road probably since 1869. And I don't perceive them of ever spending any money in the future. And I can appreciate the differential between the county road standards and the people that want to develop some land, and that's why we don't necessarily oppose changing it to a public road. I'm just would be concerned that the county isn't giving it away to 1 or 2 homeowner or landowners against the best interests of me and the rest of the county. Thanks.
Is there anyone else who'd like to speak? Okay. So before I close the public hearing, maybe we can try to answer the questions or that were posed. So the first one I wrote down is who's in charge of the maintenance. So hypothetically, if the local access road if the road does get constructed through there and creates a local access road, who are the folks that are generally in charge of the maintenance?
The adjoining landowners, the users of the road, as we like to say, would be responsible for the maintenance. So, but that would fall upon the adjoining landowners.
Okay. So if the road was to move forward and be constructed, who would most likely make that request and get the approval from the county?
I'm not quite sure what you're asking. Could you repeat that?
So hypothetically, let's just say that somebody lives on Beamer Road, makes the request that local access road gets constructed all the way through to Sheercon, just because they want to drive to Crestwell that way. Is that something that's going to, potentially be approved by our county staff, or is there going to be some sort of a need for that road short of just being able to drive through? So, I mean, my knowledge is most of the time people, like in this instance, they want to build a home, so they need a road to their home, and so that's how the upper section is potentially being proposed to be constructed. Wouldn't it most likely be Mr. Sawyer that would request that the road be constructed and get approval to build the local access road because he's the owner of the property surrounding the remainder of the road?
David, can you answer this?
Yeah, I'll take a stab at it. Mr. Chair and Commissioners, so before this hearing, I worked with my staff. We researched the 2004 TSP Transportation System Plan as well as the one we're working on right now. This particular roadway did not show up as any need in our 20-year plan, so it's not something that's on any of our draft project lists for something that we would seek funding for ourselves. However, we do have a development review or site plan review process that I'm sure you're aware of. And so in an instance like this, if there was a property that wished to develop, then they would go through a site plan review process, and then transportation planning, amongst others, would have the opportunity to provide comments, and we would look at our development code and have access requirements, things like that. However, through this application, we have the difference between the developer developing their section of roadway either to county standards, which is much more rigorous, or to the local access road standard. Again, this, if they wanted to develop further, if somebody wanted to develop further down on the map there, say in the middle, then they would still be required per our code to have access. And then depending on how or the result of this application, they would be held to one of those two standards. Does that help a little?
Helps a little bit, but so the question back that I didn't hear the answer to is who would get the permission to develop that road? It doesn't exist today.
It would be
Other than we have the public, it's a right-of-way on paper. So how would that road get developed in most cases to travel standards? Who would get the approval to do that? I mean, it's not going to be Faye that lives in Cottage Grove that's looking for a new route to get to Eugene. What would that process look
Sure.
like?
So it would be a development-driven process. So wherever their development was occurring, then they would, as a condition of approval, be required to provide that access to that. So it would be on that development to develop it to local access road standards if this were to pass.
Okay, all right. Commissioner Mosevich.
Thank you. And I don't know if we should close the public hearing before I go into further questions for staff, or
I was trying to get the questions that were answered on the record, so there is.
Well, I guess mine does relate to some of the questions that were brought up in the public testimony. So, the first one related to gates, and there apparently we've heard that there are already gates across what is now a county roadway, right away. So, are those existing gates across a right of way legal now? And then the second question is if this becomes local access road, are they going to continue to be legal, denying public access to what is now public right-of-way?
I know of one gate that's right past the end of the current end of county maintenance on Beamer Road. I do believe that in that application there was a requirement to move that gate. Maybe David would know more on that. I think the important thing to remember is that this road was established in 1869. That was the last time it has been surveyed. At this point in time, I could not go out on the ground and show you where that right-of-way exists. It would need to be surveyed in. So there could be gates out there. I'm sure there's fences out there. They're probably containing livestock. It's really hard to say. That's a difficult question to answer at this point because I don't know where the location of the road is. It would need to be surveyed in.
Okay. Mr. Mukhaisky, did you have something you wanted to say?
I just want to make sure that there wasn't anyone else who had comments before you closed the public hearing.
Yeah. So I was just trying to get some answers to the questions, and it looks like Mr. Sawyer might. Do you want to come forward and make a response to that?
There are a number of cross fences on the ranch. The Christensen brothers, a famous rodeo stock contracting family, had a long history of running livestock there. We've added a couple of more fences on our property because of rotational grazing with livestock, the way we manage it. And that way of managing livestock is kind of what we understand right now to be the best way to manage the resource. So there are fences, and I don't know where this right-of-way is on the ground exactly, but there's also a right-of-way for a gas line and a BPA power line that runs through there. So I have to make sure I don't encumber their access and whatnot that time of year when we have livestock there. But why anybody would want access to a roadway that 8 months out of the year I can't drive a four-wheel drive vehicle on 70% of it because it is a muddy, soggy piece of ground. And that's why we run yearlings there. So we're only there in the dry months. So there's a number of fences. I don't know where gates are relative to this public right-of-way, but I'm sure it's cross-fenced several times.
So let me ask you a question. When you purchased this property, did you know that public road was there?
Well, it's on plat map, so I certainly saw it, but I never sat down and read the detail about it. I mean, I understand if it, keep it public the way it is now. I understand that, but I don't want that to hurt my neighbor and her development cost. That standard seems a little steep for what she's trying to do. Keeping a public right away, fine. But if it's just going to go to the I'm getting in the bite of the line here, it seems to me, versus just vacating it. And I don't see where it hurts the public, because what's that access worth? You're not going to come spend several $100,000 to go from Dillard Road to Cresswell that way. And I'm certainly not going to build it, but I don't want to have to maintain it either.
Sure.
I'm beating a dead horse.
Okay, thanks. So Commissioner Bozovich.
Thanks. So I want to also clarify the ability to construct an LAR, because I've run into this in platted right-of-ways, undeveloped right-of-way down on the coast, where neighbors felt somebody was violating the beaches and dunes overlay zone by clearing a roadway to develop a driveway into a property, even though they already had access from the other side of the property. And I was specifically told by land management that it does not require a permit to develop a road in an LAR, and told by the public works folks in the roadside that they don't issue access permits for construction of local access roads. So it says to me that if there is right-of-way there and it's designated local access, and you have adjoining property, that you have basically the right and without permits the ability to go in and develop a local access road to your property, or through somebody else's property, past somebody else's property, because that was what these neighbors were objecting to, was the clearing of vegetation up against their property line, as this guy was trying to build a road into his property, which would have been his second access to his property. But I was basically told by land management that that's perfectly legal. So could you clarify, does there need to be a permit to build a local access road? And does it truly require site review, or can it be just done?
I'm not sure I can answer that question. David, do you know the answer to that?
I would have to look into that. I don't have that answer with me at the moment, unfortunately.
And our land management director happens to be in the audience, so maybe she can answer that question.
Commissioners, Lydia McKinney, Land Management Division Manager and Planning Director. With regards to your question, Commissioner Bozovich, it's correct that local access roads do not require a facility permit if a person wants to construct one. We've been directed by the board in the years past not to spend resources on local access roads, and so we don't do that. We don't require facility permits, so that's correct. But just speaking with regards to what David was saying with regards to site plan review, so if somebody comes in to develop their property would be required to go through site plan review or whatever the base zoning requires. And through that development review, we would look at what a person is proposing, and I think that's the case that happened here, again, is that a person wanted to provide access to their farm dwelling. So if a person has a piece of property with a local access road through there, they still would have to come through the county, through land management and transportation planning for permits for the development, but then the actual road itself could be constructed by the property owner. It would be the private property owner's cost without having to actually get a facility permit. Other permits would apply.
But it most likely would be in conjunction with the approval of a land application for a dwelling or something. Is that correct?
That's correct. And I mean, theoretically, and I know we have this case on the coast, I mean, a person could, choose to go out and construct a road if they wanted to do so without a facility permit. If somebody wanted to just, go out and start constructing a road at their own cost, because there isn't a facility permit requirement, I don't think there's anything that would preclude them from doing that.
Thank you. I just wanted to make that clear because, and you answered my question, is if there's not development going on and the person just wants to build in the local access right-of-way, they can do so. No permits required. Then the ultimate question is now you have somebody who's constructed local access road that might not always adjoin their own property, might actually pass other properties. Is there any obligation then for the other properties then to participate in the maintenance of that local access road because they front it?
And there may be, the rule of thumb that I've always known was that the adjoining landowners always participated in the maintenance of a local access road, the users of the road.
Which is, I'm somewhat familiar with living on a local access road and having chipped in my $175 for gravel last year. So I just want to make clear, because there were a couple of, that's one of the concerns of one of the testimony was, can somebody just build this without and extend through my property because it exists? And then another question was about whether gates are legal or not across what is public right-of-way. And I'm not so sure. I feel like I've have clear enough legal. I'm hearing from staff, but I'm not hearing from legal counsel about some of the answers to these questions. That it might not be worth having legal counsel weigh in on those particular questions about the gates, permitting, and maintenance obligation if somebody else builds the road, before I'm prepared to make a decision on this and whether we want to close the record until we have that input. Because I'm a little concerned that we are making a decision about downgrading a county right-of-way in this, and at that point there is no barrier to construction in that right-of-way. As soon as we say it's a local access road, we basically open it up to whoever lives along that road can get out their cat, grade it, gravel it. If they put enough fabric and enough rock down, you can get across muddy ground. It's just all a matter of dollars. Provided they can find a right-of-way. So I'm assuming they're going to also have to pay a lot of money just to survey the right-of-way. But we're changing it from where it would be, if it's a designated county road, there is a permit process to build a county road, a very clear permit process, and it has to be built to county standards. If it's a local access road, there is not a clear permit process. And then the question becomes who maintain, and because it's a local access road, it's maintained by the users and neighbors of that road, who is actually obligated for that maintenance. Is a question. Those are questions I think that ought to be definitively answered before we take definitive action on this, and I think they could be answered in a couple weeks easily. But I'm a little bit reluctant to close the hearing and close the record until we have definitive answers to those questions.
Okay. Commissioner Farr.
Thank you. Regarding Mr. Salyer's conservation easement request, if it were granted a conservation easement, would that eliminate the right-of-way, or the right-of-ways continue in an easement of that nature?
The right-of-way is an easement, so the conservation easement would
not affect it.
It would still exist, yeah.
Okay.
That right is to the public, and that would have to be vacated in order for it to revert back to underlying ownership.
And just to put it in perspective, 1869 was 10 years after Oregon became a state. 10 years previous to that, Lane County went to the Grand Tetons. So, it's pretty ancient decisions, and I would guess there was very little surveying that was done at the time even. It was probably just a dotted line on a map that somebody drew. So,
yeah, the survey is very crude at best.
And the likelihood of anyone other than Mr. Salyer wanting an easement, other than the immediate the person who requested it, pretty low, I would think. But
good.
If 2 weeks is all we need to get the answers to Commissioner Bozovich's questions, and do you see any problem in waiting 2 weeks? There's no urgency in this.
Possibly, the landowner that's trying to get permission to build a house.
Yeah, catching the construction season, sure.
Might be on a time schedule.
I am also going to be on vacation in a couple weeks, so I probably wouldn't be back I probably wouldn't be able to come back until early June.
Okay.
I just saw legal counsel.
We have legal counsel that came down. So, Mr. Clark, would you mind going forward? We have at least 3 questions. I don't know if you're prepared to answer. Maybe you heard them, but
I think I heard most of them, and yeah, I can't say definitively now the answers to them. continuance of the hearing or.
How much time would you like to have to research those?
A week or two is fine. I don't know what the calendar looks like for the next possible.
We
meeting,
just set next week's agenda. It might be possible to bring this back. Stick it in the afternoon, or not the afternoon, because we have it'd have to be in the morning because we have a budget meeting in the afternoon.
Our meetings are pretty full the next 2 weeks, but we can work to fit it in if that's what you'd like to do.
Well, I don't want,
What's next Wednesday look like?
next Wednesday, we don't have a scheduled meeting next Wednesday. At least we didn't schedule anything next Wednesday, the 11th. And we also have the 18th, 17th, and 18th.
Mr. Plumey said he was going to be out of town that week.
Okay, so it needs to be next week then.
11th would work.
I won't be back until the 24th.
Will you be here on the 11th?
No, I will not be here on the 11th.
Okay.
The 10th?
I'll be up in Hood River at the Oregon Association of County Engineers and Surveyors Conference in Hood River. I could cancel that trip if we want to schedule that for next week.
Maybe I'll ask Mr. Taylor. I don't know if you can speak for your clients, but a decision on the 24th, is that soon enough or not?
If that's the best that can happen, Chair, I think we can go with the 24th. If I may, can I ask whether the board would entertain breaking this into two parts? It seems like from the testimony that there's two things going on here. I hope I'm not too presumptuous, but it appears that there's agreement on the northern section that affects this first 1,000 feet in my client, making that a local access road. With Mr. Salyers raised a number of good points, being the owner on both sides of this unsurveyed road. Possibly the board can entertain that separately, and for the aspects of actually vacating it. But that's just a suggestion. But otherwise, the 24th, yes, sir.
Okay. I guess my question with that information would be, might be to David, could the board direct an LAR standard for that 1,000 feet of road instead of a public road, or does it officially have to be downgraded from public road to, or public road to a LAR?
It's a good question. The way I read the code is that the standard is set that they would have to build it to county road status if it's, there's a minimum standard for county road status, and that it would need to be built to that if it's remaining in, as is right now. And so that was really the driver for Mr. Ingram suggesting if they wanted to go to a local access road standard that they would have to go through this process instead.
Mr. Farr?
What about just redesignating the first 1,000 feet and leaving the rest in county road?
I'd like to point out that that is option number 2, would be to come up with a different length of road that we wanted to withdraw, and we would come back at a future date and amend this order.
That seems the most likely scenario to me. It would not affect Mr. Salyer's land, and it would allow the current property owner to have that access. So, Mr. Chair, I think looking at what is option 2 seems to be a very reasonable alternative at this point.
Option 2 would direct staff to alter the limits of the withdrawal of county road status as the board may wish. An amended order would be scheduled for a future board meeting.
Which could be the 24th.
It would probably be the week after the 24th. That's the day I return.
Okay.
As soon as we could get that scheduled reasonably, we would come back in with an amended order.
And that item possibly could be on the consent calendar.
Yeah, if we close the record in the public hearing today, and then that's the motion, I think that could come back as a consent item, possibly.
So, Mr. Chair, I would move option 2. Close the public record today and move option 2 with a request to come back at the first meeting after the 24th to with a consent calendar item to pass option 2.
This is on order 16050306.
Yeah. Thank you.
And we probably need to define the limits, so that would be the 1,000 feet requested by, Mr. Taylor's.
RST Ranch Incorporated.
I would propose that we withdraw the county road status to a point at the southerly line of the property in question.
Perfect. Then that would be my motion. Option 2 to withdraw the county road status to the southerly point of the property in question.
Of the applicant,
Of the
yes.
applicant. And come back the first meeting after the 24th, which is the 31st.
If it's a consent calendar item, I could probably have it on the 24th.
On the 24th, okay.
I wouldn't need to appear, so that would work.
Okay. So, Ms. Mokrajewski, did you get that motion? There's option 2 with the withdrawal of county road status to the southerly point of the RST, the applicant's property, and to return with a consent calendar item on the 24th. Okay.
Second.
Okay. Any further discussion? All right, a lot of work. Hopefully we got this right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It passes unanimous.
And I don't see Mr. Sellier opposing, so
Not yet, anyway.
thank you.
Okay.
He's always
you.
welcome to apply for a vacation of that right away.
Yeah.
There is a cost
Okay.
and a process.
So our next item
David?
is Public Works item B, which is a public hearing and setting a final hearing / order for 16-05-03-07 in the matter of annexing territory to the McKenzie Fire and Rescue District to provide fire protection service to the annexation territory consisting of portions of TRS 17-01-32-40, tax lots 1006, 1011, and 1012, file number F-MK-2016-ANX-1. We have with us Lindsay Eichner, planner, and Lydia McKinney, our planning director. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Chair and Commissioners. The request before you today, as stated, is for a request for annexation into a special district. And these are a little bit different than the normal applications that our Land Management Division office brings to you for plan amendments. They are subject to ORS 198 and also to a board order that was adopted in 2007. It's board order 07-12-12-19. And that provides guidance to staff for processing these types of applications in better clarity than the ORS provides. So today's the first of 2 public hearings that are required by ORS Chapter 198. Today we're looking at request to annex the remaining portions of these 3 parcels. The half, or probably a little bit less than half, of these properties are already within the fire district boundary. It's annexing the remainder. I tried looking into the history of how it came about in these configurations and had to cut my research short because it was taking a long time. But I did find out in the early 2000s, the properties to the north and east were all annexed in. So I think that these were just a remainder portion that didn't get annexed into the district. But it's very important because one of the parcels has a dwelling fully outside of the district, and one of the parcels has a dwelling partially in and partially out of the district. So it's really good to get the dwellings fully within the fire district for emergency services. So the properties the 3 parcels are owned by 2 different families with a total of 4 official property owners. Every single one of the property owners signed the request, which is important to note. The fire district supported and approved the request for annexations through 2 different resolutions. The different property owners went to the fire district board at different times. One was in 2008 and one was in 2016. The notice of the public hearing today was provided as required by statute, published in the newspaper and posted in multiple places. If the board approves the annexation request today, then a second hearing is limited to considering whether there is a request for an election on this matter. If there's not a request for election at the second public hearing, the board, at your discretion, can move to adopt a final order and approve the annexation. So the annexation request makes sense to staff and to the fire district, and they have the applicant has adequately addressed all of the approval criteria that's laid out in the board order from 2007, which identifies specific areas of ORS 198. Staff recommends that the board adopt the preliminary order annexing the territory into the McKenzie Fire and Rescue District, and setting a final hearing for May 24th at 1:30 p.m. Thank you.
Okay. Questions before I open the public hearing? Commissioner Farr?
This could probably be after the closing of the public hearing. So you need to adopt Order 07 and move a date for 24-whatever it's going to be.
May
Yes.
24th.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. All right. Good. Understand.
Okay. Other questions? All right. Seeing none, I'd like to open the public hearing. Is there anyone here that would like to speak to this matter? Okay. Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing and look to the board for direction. Commissioner Farr?
Mr. Chair, I move to adopt Order 16-05-03-07 in the matter of annexing territory to the McKenzie Fire and Rescue District, et cetera, and move a final hearing, set a final hearing for 5/24/16, May 24, 16th. Do you need a time certain? 1:30?
1:30, please.
Okay, 1:30 time certain.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay. Further discussion?
Okay.
All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passed unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you.
I saved 4 minutes by not reading all of that.
All right. So that covers our public works items and public hearings. So our next item is review of assignments. Review of assignments.
Okay. That's what I thought you said, sorry. Have a couple here, Mr. Chair. Commissioner Likenen Sorensen asked about some follow-up information. Actually, I think we answered all of Commissioner Sorensen's questions on urban renewal, but we will follow up regarding the rain facility in the urban renewal district and the potential of competing interests there with the city of Eugene. Commissioner Bozovich asked for an update on Envision Eugene, the Envision Eugene process and the transportation plan. So we will have that discussion at agenda team. And then the second to last item that we had, we will return on May 24th with a consent item regarding the withdrawal of county road status item.
Okay.
So those 3, unless I missed anything.
Commissioner Farr?
Just to note that I did not ask for an agenda item regarding the public safety issue in the River Road area, but that will come subsequent to this meeting.
That's what I thought I heard you say.
All right. Is there any other business before the board today? just remind us that we have our first Budget Committee meeting and public hearing this evening. It starts at 5:30. I think our meals are be available at 4:30. So until then, I guess we're adjourned until our Budget Committee.